Hey guys, welcome back to How to Build a Cyber Lab at Home with Kyle Slaze. We're going to talk in this lecture just a little bit about cloud and what does cloud mean. Cloud computing is a buzzword that's thrown around the industry a lot, and it means different things to different people. So let me kind of set the standard right here first for this class. When I talk about cloud computing in this class, in this context, I really mean infrastructure as a service. And what that means is that I want to go out to a cloud provider, and in the case of this example, we're going to talk about Amazon AWS. So I want to go out to Amazon AWS and I want to spin up a server and I want to use that server in any way I want. So it's running in Amazon's data center, it's virtualization, and this is the perfect way to build a cloud or to build a lab, especially if you want to build a large lab and run it only when you need to run it. So in this sense, Amazon AWS is Amazon's cloud computing infrastructure as a service application. It's called EC2, Elastic Compute Cloud. And what we're going to do is we're going to spin up a couple of virtual machines in that cloud, and we actually pay by the hour for each of the virtual machines. So if you only need to run a couple of quick tests, it could be pretty cheap to run. Anywhere between a couple of cents to a couple of dollars to run it for, a couple hours. So with that, let's jump into AWS and I'll show you around.
All right, so this is Amazon Web Services, or AWS, and you can get to Amazon Web Services by just going to aws.amazon.com. And if you already have an Amazon account, you can go ahead and just sign up for AWS. Signing up doesn't cost anything. You only pay when you actually use the service. So you can see they've got a lot of cool things here. We're not going to use most any of this, but we are going to use the EC2, which is their Elastic Compute Cloud. And this is their virtual servers, their infrastructure as a service. So let's go here and we'll bring up the EC2 management dashboard. And you can see that, right now I don't have any running VMs, and, no big deal, right? So first thing I want to do is I actually want to create a key pair. So we'll go down to key pairs and we'll hit create key pair. And we'll just name it default. Okay. And what this does is you can see that it downloaded a certificate. That's a public-private certificate for AWS, and I'm going to use that to do encrypted connections between my local machine and the Amazon EC2 cloud. So you'll see where we'll use those here in a minute once we hit hook up over to the instances. So let's go over to instances, and these are your individual VMs, and you can see I've got a couple here that are all off. These are ones that I've played around with in the past, but we're going to actually launch a new instance. So we'll launch an instance. And you can see you have a couple of different what they call AMIs, Amazon Machine Images. And these are different VMs that are already built. So it's really quick. You can do Red Hat, SUSE, Ubuntu, but we're going to do Windows Server 2012. We'll talk about some of the other AMIs later in the next section, in the Use Your Lab section. But I just want you to note that they have these different things, and anything that says free tier eligible means that if you're a brand new customer to EC2, to Amazon AWS, they have this free tier for a lot of their services. And for EC2, you get a couple of 100 hours of compute time per month free for a year. So it's really a great way to kind of get started in cloud-based lab environments. So let's go ahead and hit this one. We'll select this one, and we're going to choose a T2 Micro just because it's the smallest one, it's the cheapest one. You can see that it comes with one CPU at about 2.5 gigahertz. It's an Intel Xeon style processor, and you get about 1 gig of RAM, and then you get an EBS block store, which is their Elastic Block Store. It's their way of dynamically provisioning hard drives to, or virtual hard drives to virtual machines. And EBS, we'll talk about that later once we get to the storage portion. But let's go to next. We only want to spin up one, but if you wanted to spin up 5 of the same VM, you could do that. We'll keep the same networking information, and we want to check this, right? Automatically assign a public IP address. What that'll do is that each VM will have a public IP address, but once you turn off that VM, that public IP address basically goes back to the general store and somebody else can grab that. So every time you terminate a VM, it loses that IP address. Every time you bring one up, it'll be issued a new IP address. Now you can set a custom IP address that's just yours. You do have to pay for it per hour. So just be careful when you're doing that. When I first started this AWS thing, I thought that was great. I didn't realize that you had to pay per hour, and I grabbed an IP address and I wasn't using it, and I kept it for about a month. My bill at the end of the month was like $100 for keeping that IP address. So just be careful with that. We're going to go down here. You can see network interfaces. Right now it'll only have one network interface. You can add another device. You can add another interface if you want. But yeah, let's move on to storage. And right now we are going to have a one hard drive, and it's going to sit at 30 gigs. Now, this is a EBS stored hard drive. And what that means is that when the VM is terminated or turned off, you can choose to keep that hard drive, and you have to pay a certain amount of money per gig of that hard drive space to just keep it lying around so that you can spin up another VM with that same hard drive. You can check here, delete on termination. So when you hit terminate, there's a difference between stopping and terminating, and we'll talk about that when we get into operating the VM. But we're going to check delete on termination because we don't necessarily care to keep this VM around. Next, you can tag it. If you have a bunch of VMs, you can tag them to, better filter out the the ones that you're just looking for. So they give an example here with a tag, the name, and you could do value web server, and you could do that for a couple of VMs, and you could say, show me all of the VMs that have name web server. Next, we'll do the security groups. Security groups are basically the firewalls to your VM, to your instance. So right now, I'm going to create a new security group, and I can name it whatever I want. I'm just going to name it this default and go with it. But if you already have a security group, you can click select an existing security group, and there's all the security groups that are in my account. But we'll just go create a new one. Right here you have RDP, the protocol's TCP, the port is 3389, and we're going to allow that from anywhere. And that's the IP address for anywhere in AMI. Then I can also do, I only want it from my specific IP address. Or a custom IP or a custom IP range. You can do that. You can also add other rules, things like all ICMP traffic, HTTP traffic if you're going to run a web server, MySQL, but we're going to actually keep it at just RDP because we just want to play locally on this for now. Alright, and we'll just go to review and launch, and basically just gives you everything else that we've already talked about and already discussed. So we're just going to launch it. Now here's where the default key pair, remember we created that key pair at the very beginning of this lecture? Here's where it comes into play. When it spins up this AMI, this instance, it's going to set the default administrator password, and you're going to need that to log into the machine. Well, the default administrator password is actually encrypted with that key pair that we created at the beginning. So I want to select my default key pair, and I'll acknowledge that. So it's really important to not lose this default.pem file, because if you lose that and then you can't remember the default password for the AMI, basically you won't be able to get into the machine. You'll have to shut it down and start a new one. So we'll go ahead and launch the instance. And it takes a couple of seconds here and it says now your instance is launching. So I'm just going to go click on that, and you can see that it's pending, it's starting to initialize, and we'll sit here for a couple of minutes and let it spin up. Alright, so now you can see that it is now running, and I have an IP address here. Okay, so right now what I want to do is I need to get the password for the administrator account. So I'm going to click on the AMI I'm looking at. I'm going to click on Actions, and I want to get Windows password. Okay, now here's the catch to this get Windows password thing. The auto generation takes a little bit of time to go for, so it says you must wait for 4 minutes before, or I'm sorry, after launching the instance before you can retrieve the auto-generated password. So we're going to go ahead and close that out, and we're just going to wait right now for that instance to generate the default administrator password. Alright, so it's been about 4 minutes, and let's see if we can decrypt the Windows password. Alright, so here we have the default key name, so let's choose that default.pem, and we will decrypt the password. Alright, so here we go. This is the password. I'm going to just copy that, and I'm going to open up Microsoft Remote Desktop Connection. Create a new connection. We'll just paste the password there. The username is administrator, and then the IP address. We'll copy that. We'll paste that there. And we'll just call this AWS. Alright, let's start that instance. Alright, and it's going to come up with this. It's using a self-sign certificate. That's fine. Hit continue. Alright, and since this is the first time we're running in, this login will probably take a minute or two, but yeah. Alright, well here we go. We now have a fully functioning Windows 2012 R2 server, and we can just do with this as we like. So I'm actually just going to disconnect here. And we'll close that out. And so now we're running this here. We can stop the instance. And what stopping the instance does is it means that we're no longer paying for the compute power for this particular instance. But if we go to the Elastic Block Store and we go to Volumes, we can see that this volume right here is still in use, but once the instance terminates or stops here, we're good. We are paying for the 30 gigs here still, but we're not paying hourly for the instance. And if we wanted to start it back up, we could go to here and click Start. Are you sure we want to start this instance? Yes. And it will take a second or two to start up, and we will probably have a different IP address when we start back up. And then we could just use it as we wish. Okay, so now it's running, and we can connect to it again if we want. But if we're finished with it and we don't want to pay for the Elastic Block Store anymore, we'll just hit Terminate, and it says warning: the EBS backed instances will be deleted. And yes, we want to terminate, and that terminates the instance itself, and the EBS volume will be deleted, so we will no longer be paying for that. So that's, your quick and dirty for AWS. There's a whole lot of other features within this, and I encourage you to play around with it, especially if you're a brand new customer to them and you have that free tier. It really wouldn't cost you almost anything to do. So, yeah, we'll see you in the next lecture.